Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my hunters. I am Marcia from Mom Hunts Dead People. If this is your first time here, I highly recommend jumping to episode 1 of the Lizzie Borden trial so you don't miss a beat. If you have been here for a while now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all the YouTubey things. Now, let's get started. So, let's dig in. F.L. Edson, Fall River, Massachusetts, Friday, August 5th, 1892. At 5:55 a.m., went from the police station of the residence of the late A.J. Borden, number 92 2nd Street. Arrived there about 6 a.m. Entered house by the side door on north side of the house. Officer Harrington was on duty at the door. The door from the entry to kitchen was open. V.J. Morse was in front of the stove. We did not speak. I went down cellar from the entry, went into the washroom, into the southernmost corner of the cellar. On the floor were 2 axes and a single hatchet. On a bench or table were a number of wet towels. There was blood on the towels. I went upstairs with the axes and hatchet, met Harrington at the door. Harrington said, "There was one more hatchet in the cellar." I went down cellar again, Harrington with me. In the vegetable cellar, off washroom, Harrington handed me a hatchet from a shelf or scaffold. We then went upstairs and out the house. On the steps, I saw John V. Morse coming from the backyard. I said, "Good morning." He answered. I went from there directly to the police station, arriving there about 6:23 a.m. At the police station, I examined the axes. They were common ones, had been used rough, the single hatchet the same. The large hatchet was in good condition and very sharp. On the back of the blade near the handle was a spot of rust or blood. From this spot to the handle was light-colored hair. There were dark spots on handle. Do not know whether they were dirt or blood. The blade appeared to have been in water. The extreme length of this hatchet was about 17 inches, the blade about 5 inches broad. The head and claw on head about 1 inch wide and about 2.5 inches long. The length of handle wood axes about 2 feet 8 or 10 inches in length. The single hatchet about 16 inches long. Officer Harrington, Doherty, Minahan, Reagan II, and McCarty saw me when I left the premises, and Officer Mahoney and Steward Cummings when I arrived at police station. I carried the axes and hatchet openly in my hand. You can tell this is a time before, fingerprinting and stuff. Because he's like, "Yep, I just have these axes, and I'm just going to carry them out with my bare hand." Nowadays, people would freak. About 7:15 a.m., I returned to the Borden house, went into the house with Officer Doherty. Bridget Sullivan and J.V. Morse were in the kitchen. I also inquired of Morse about his relatives in New Bedford and vicinity. I also inquired about Mrs. Borden's relatives. Morse called Miss Emma, and she answered the questions. While I was talking to Miss Emma, Miss Lizzie came in. She said, "Bridget, are you sure the back cellar door was fastened?" Bridget said, "Yes, marm." Monday, August 8, 1892. About 10 a.m., went to the A.J. Borden house with Charles H. Bryant, officers Desmond, Medley, Connors, and Quigley. Desmond asked permission to search the premises of Miss Lizzie and Emma. They gave consent. We searched the cellar, chimneys, sounded walls and floor, after which we searched the barn, outhouse, under outhouse, yard, lumber pile in the yard, and adjoining yards. We found no weapon or anything suspicious. This search was completed about 1:30 in the afternoon. It has got to suck to search the outhouse. An outhouse is not as clean and orderly and tidy as a modern outhouse, at least not the ones then, and they wouldn't be as nice as anywhere near as nice as a modern bathroom. What's even worse is Under outhouse. They searched underneath the outhouse. That would have been the most foul-smelling job. Friday, August 26, J.V. Morse testified that 1 axe and 3 hatchets were taken from the house, put in a light-colored bag of coarse material, and carried away. This is false. All right, so if you're remembering, then just a minute ago, he said that he carried all the axes and hatchet out openly in his hand. J.V. Morse is saying, well, I clearly saw them put in a light-colored bag of coarse material and taken away. And the dude's like, no, you didn't. I'm the one who took them away. They were in my hand. They were not in a bag. George F. Seaver, August 11th, 1892. Early Thursday morning, August 11th, went to Luther's Corners, Swansea, with Marshall Hillard, to the farm owned by the late Andrew J. Borden, and had an interview with Frederick Eddy and Alfred C. Johnson, who had been employed on that place, Mr. Eddy for 16 years and Johnson for 9. Frederick Eddy made the following statement. John V. Morse came over to this house Wednesday evening, August 3rd, between 7 and 8 o'clock. He drove a horse and top buggy. Said it was a stable team. He came in the house and brought a riding basket, took out 3 pears and laid on the table. Said he brought them over from the Borden house. He said Mr. Borden sent him over to see how I was and get the eggs. Said Mr. Borden was coming with them, but he, his wife, and Lizzie were taken sick last night and he couldn't come. He said he stopped to supper at Mr. Vinicum's, who lives a short distance from here. I said to him after he got his eggs, how about the oxen Mr. Davis of South Dartmouth was to have to use? I'm going back and see Mr. Borden and think we will make arrangements to get them back over Saturday morning, was the reply. Mr. Morse stayed here perhaps 10 or 15 minutes. Since hearing of the murder, it has seemed to me a singular coincidence that he should have come over that night for the eggs, for had he not, I should have taken the train and gone to Mr. Borden's Thursday morning, arriving at the house about 10:45 or 11. I have seen the axes and hatchets at Mr. Borden's. The large hatchet was comparatively new. When it was bought, it was brought over here and ground sharp. After being ground, Mr. Borden was here, and it was carried out and put on the wall by the gate for him to carry home. When he went away, he said, I won't take the hatchet. It'll be coming over in a day or 2, and you bring it over, which I did. I did not use axes or hatchets at Mr. Borden's. As a Sweden, Andrew Johnson went to Mr. Borden's when he was not busy here, and did all the work, cutting the wood, cleaning up the yard, etc. When I go to Fall River with hay or anything for market, I have always been in the habit of going to Mr. Borden's house for dinner. Sometimes I have eaten dinner with them. Often I have not got there until after they were through dinner. Alfred Johnson made the following statement. Have worked for Mr. Borden 9 years. Have done his work at the house, cutting wood and cleaning up the yard, when not busy at the farm. I think the 2 last times I cut wood was early in the spring and again just before planting. Mr. Borden had 2 axes, a single hatchet, and a shop or bench hatchet. The bench hatchet has never been used since it was sharpened. I ground it over here on the farm in the early spring. The hatchet and axes were always kept in one place, in a box in the wood room on the left, at the left of the furnace. Never found them in any other place, and always put them back after using them, as Mr. Borden was particular about having one place for all tools. When I have been working at Mr. Borden's, I have stayed there. I love how they referred to people as nationalities. The Frenchman, the Portuguese, the Swede. I wonder how many more nationalities we're going to get to by the end of this. Are we going to make a circle around the world? We're just going to try and hit everybody up. George W. Seaver, BP. D. Desmond. On Monday, August 8, 1892, F.L. Edson, P. Connors, M. Quigley, W.H. Medley, and D. Desmond went to Borden House, 2nd Street, to make a search of the premises. Mr. Charles Bryant, mason and contractor, went with us to assist if necessary. I, Desmond, inquires for either of the Borden family, and Lizzie Borden came. I told her that we had been sent by Marshal Hillard to make some further search of the premises. Lizzie said, if there was going to be anything done or anything said, Mr. Jennings must be here. This took place in sitting room. Hanscom was sitting in the room at the time while waiting for Mr. Jennings. Emma came into the sitting room from front hallway and said, if you only want to do some searching, you can go right ahead and search any place you wish. But if there is any conversation to be had, Mr. Jennings better be here. I told her we came only to search. About the time we got ready to search, Mr. Jennings came. I told what Lizzie said, also what Emma said. Mr. Jennings said, that's all right. Go right ahead. Edson, Connors, Quigley, Medley, Desmond, and Charles Bryant went into the cellar. Had only been there a few minutes when Mr. Jennings and Hanscom came down. Mr. Jennings spoke about the lumber pile in the yard and wanted us to be sure and search that before we got done. Mr. Bryant and myself, Desmond, looked over the chimneys. After finishing the east chimney, which is the one in the kitchen, we went to look at the one in the west of the building. This runs up between the parlor and dining room. The side of the dining room seemed to be bricked up or cemented. While we were looking over it, Emmett and Lizzie both said, if the front is in your way, tear it out. Mr. Jennings was there at the time. Emma spoke about a lumber pile in the yard and thought it would be a good place to search. Mr. Bryant and myself went into the cellar, and it was thoroughly searched by Edson, Connors, Quigley, and Desmond. From there we went and searched the barn, lumber pile, yard, privy vault, and well. Also John Crow's yard, which is on the south side of the Borden house. The search, I am satisfied, was a good one, but we failed to find anything. At the outset of the search in the cellar, Officer Medley found a small hatchet. I wrapped it up in a newspaper and gave it to Medley to put in his pocket. It had no handle to it. On afternoon, August 8, 1892, Marshal Hillard, John Fleet, George Seaver, Dr. Dolan, and D. Desmond met at Borden House, 2nd Street, about 3 o'clock. Mr. Jennings joined, and a thorough search of the house commenced. We started in the attic and overhauled everything, piece by piece. From there, we came down to 2nd floor and gave it the same thorough search. This was continued until the cellar was reached, the same persons with the exception of D. Desmond doing the searching there. So I like the fact that they're waiting for the lawyer. I'm not sure warrants were a thing in 1892. So I guess they just showed up and were like, hey, we're searching the house. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Stay here in the parlor until our lawyer gets here. And then the other sister's like, you know what? If you're not going to talk to us, but you're just going to search the house, like go ahead. Joseph Hyde, August 4th, 1892. In talking to Bridget Sullivan on the above date, I asked her what time Mrs. Borden went upstairs. She said she thought it was a little before 9 o'clock in the morning, and sometime after she came down for some pillow shams. And she said to me, have you anything particular to do? Bridget answered, no, Mom. Mrs. Borden said, I would like you to wash those windows. I went out and washed the windows and never saw Mrs. Borden alive again. I asked her if she saw anyone around. She said she was speaking to Dr. Kelly's servant. After washing the windows, she came in and let Mr. Borden in by the front door. Then I asked her if she fastened the door. She said she did not think she did, that she left that for Mr. Borden to do. A little while after, she saw Mr. Borden sitting on the lounge reading out of a thin book. When she went upstairs, she left Miss Lizzie in the kitchen ironing. About 8:30 in the evening, Miss Russell told me they were going to retire and would lock the door. And if we wanted anything, we could knock, and they would open the door. And a little while afterwards, Miss Russell and Miss Lizzie came down into the cellar. Miss Russell carrying a small hand lamp, and Miss Lizzie had something in her hand which I could not see distinctly. She went over to the sink and emptied something that sounded to me like water, Miss Russell standing some distance back. Then they both went upstairs. About 15 minutes after, Miss Lizzie came down the cellar alone, with the small lamp in her hand. She set the lamp on the table and went over towards the sink again and stooped. But I could not see what she did there. Then she took up the lamp again and went upstairs. He is all over the place in this first paragraph. So we have Bridget talking. We have Joseph Hyde talking. We have Mrs. Borden talking. Pretty sure that this one sentence is from, even though it's not in quotes, and it says I'm pretty sure it's from Bridget's point of view. I went out and watched the windows and never saw Mrs. Borden again alive. That would imply to me that we should still be in quotes, but this time is back to Bridget. I wish these people had written it like kind of novel style and not just lumped everybody together. So he is asking if she fastened the door. She said she doesn't think so. She left it for Mr. Borden to do. She left Lizzie in the kitchen ironing. This is the part that kind of confuses me. Like, is he still talking to Bridget? Or is he moved? I'm assuming he's moved on and that he's no. You could at least put a space there, buddy. He's saying about 8:30 in the evening, Miss Russell told me they were going to retire. So I'm assuming that Joseph Hyde is in the house and Mrs. Russell is like, hey, we're going to go to bed. Would you lock the door? If you need anything, just knock. This might be when the police stayed over the night. Like, the murder happened, and then that night, the police stood watch outside the house. So he's probably one of the people standing guard outside the house the night after the murder. The murders happened in the morning, mid-morning. That night, around 8 o'clock, Miss Russell is there with Lizzie. So they come downstairs. Lizzie's got something. Miss Russell's got a hand lamp. Lizzie dumps something liquid into the sink. They both go back upstairs. 15 minutes later, Lizzie goes to the cellar alone with a small hand lamp. She goes over the sink again and does something that the cop can't see. Just hear some of you yelling, we just covered this woman. Why are you explaining it? Because I'm slow. I'm slow and I need to suss this out slowly. And you're along for the ride. Put me on 1.25 speed or 1.5 speed and get me done quicker. August 8th, 9 o'clock in the morning. I spoke to Miss Russell about her and Miss Lizzie being in the cellar on the night of the 4th. Miss Russell said Miss Lizzie had the toilet pail. Miss Russell said she offered to carry the pail. Miss Lizzie says, you bring the lamp, and they went into the cellar. I said to Miss Russell, Miss Lizzie came down to the cellar alone after that. Miss Russell said that could not be. I said, oh, yes, she did. It was about 10 or 15 minutes after you and she went upstairs. Miss Russell said that must have been while I was taking my bath. About 15 minutes after this conversation, Miss Russell came to me and told me she would like me to come upstairs. She wanted me to see something. She led the way to the southeast bedroom and, pointing to something that lay on the floor under the head of the bed, said, what's that? I picked it up. It was a club about 20 inches long. She said I slept here last night. If that was there last night, I don't see how I missed seeing it. Miss Russell seemed very much excited and begged me to tell no one but the marshal. Mrs. Charles Holmes was present at the time. Well, The fact that Mrs. Charles Holmes was present, and given the way gossip has circulated around this town at lightning speeds, like it puts my internet to shame the way how fast this gossip spreads. I wish my internet was as fast and strong as their gossip. That information is probably all over town like 5 minutes before it even happened. I can see how Miss Russell would be excited. She's like, oh my God, like, look, like, I was up here last night and there was nothing. And then, like, I saw this morning. It's a clue, right? It's a clue. I'm sure the cop is like, yeah, lady, it's a clue. Go do lady stuff somewhere. John Devine. I arrived at the house of A.J. Borden, 92 2nd Street, about 11:40. Went into the cellar of the house with Officer Mullally and searched there. Found 2 hatchets and 2 axes in cellar. One of the hatchets had a mark across it that drew our attention to it. Marks across the blade and a mark diagonally on the inner corner of the same hatchet. We, myself, and Mullally called the attention of the Assistant Marshal Fleet to it at the time. 2 hatchets were in the wash cellar. 2 axes were in the next room west of the washroom. John Riley. Fall River, August 28, 1892. I arrived at the Borden house about 12:35, August 4th. I was told of the murder on the way to the station house. Went into the kitchen and sitting room. Saw Mr. Borden on the sofa. Saw some blood spots on the door leading to the parlor. Saw Mrs. Borden upstairs on the floor in the bedroom. Saw Miss Russell and Lizzie Borden in another room on the second floor. I came down and went to the cellar. Marshal Fleet, Mr. Morris, and Officer Mullally were there. Looked through the cellar, saw the hatchets. Came upstairs to the kitchen. Dr. Dolan, Dr. Bowen, and Bridget Sullivan were in there. Marshal Fleet sent me to the new Bedford depot. Left there after the 3:30 train left. Then came to the station house. The marshal then sent me to the Borden house, and I helped search the barn. I kind of like his style of writing up his witness statement. I did this. I did that. And none of these people were thinking that what they wrote down as an official document would ever be perused by people, more than 100 years later. J.M. Heap, August 14th. I saw Ronald St. Amant. He said that August 4th, he was coming from Atwater's coal yard on 8 Rod Way with a half-ton of coal at 2:30 or 3 o'clock. He met a man at the corner of 8 Rod Way and Pleasant Street. The man asked me if he could get in. I told him yes. Come on then. He asked me if I could take him to New Bedford. I asked him why did he not take the cars. He said he wanted to go in a team. I asked him if he had a girl with him. He said no. He asked me how much I'd charge to take him to New Bedford. I said $4. He said, all right. Then he kept kicking the horse. I made him understand that I had too much load to trot, and he stopped kicking the horse. I asked him what part of New Bedford he wanted to go to. He said the south part. Then he asked me if I could come back at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I said it's too late. I want to come back at 11 or 12. He said that, all right, let's hurry up. We came to the wood yard on Jink Street. Before we got there, he asked me if I had a buggy. I said, no, I have got to carry all. I showed him the carry-all. He said it was all right. He got into the carriage before I could hitch the horse to it. Then he gave me a $5 bill. I gave him one back. He wanted the reins and kept saying, hurry up. I saw that he was in a hurry, that I could not change my clothes, so I sent a boy after my coat and vest. The boy brought them. Then my wife came and asked me where I was going. I said to take this man to New Bedford. She said, I don't want you to take that man to New Bedford. Then she said that there had been someone murdered in the city today. She said it might be bad to take that man to New Bedford. I told her that he'd paid me. She said, give him back his money. I don't want you to go to New Bedford. I gave him back his $5 bill, and he gave me back $1 bill. As near as I could understand, he said, I have paid you and I want to go to New Bedford. I told him my wife didn't want me to go. Get out. I don't want to see you here again. Description: age 28 or 30, height 5 feet 8 inches or 8.5, weight 175 or 180, dark complexion, full face, smooth shaven, a little round shouldered, and leans a little to the left when walking, a dark plain suit, cutaway coat, a black stiff hat, white shirt and collar, and black bow, black hair. Mrs. Extensive St. Amand said that the man in the carriage, his head bent forward and his hat drawn over his hair, and kept saying, "Hurry up and get in." When Mr. St. Amand said, "Here is your money back," the man said, "Ain't it enough? Will you take $10? He took the $5 and some silver from his pocket. Description: age 30 or 35 years, height 5 feet 8 or 8.5 inches, weight 175 or 180, dark complexion, full face, smooth shaven, black hair, a little round shouldered, and leans a little to the left when walking, a plain dark suit, cutaway coat, a black stiff hat, white shirt and collar, and black bow. John St. Laurent, number 59, Jinks Street. Saw the man when he came out of the wood yard. He asked me if there was a livery stable around here. I told him there's one on Flint Street. Description: age 25 or 30, height 5 feet 6 or 8 inches, weight 150, dark complexion, rather plain, dark clothes, frock coat, dark derby hat, tight-fitting pants and outing shirt, a little round-shouldered and leans a little to the left when he walks. Francois Charat, Flint Street, works for Mr. St. Amand. I was in the wood yard when Mr. St. Amand and the man came in. I thought by the looks of the man's hands and face he worked out of doors. They had the appearance of being sunburned. The inside of his hands were rough and hard. I saw them when he gave the money to Mr. St. Amand. He got into the carryall before we could hitch the horse to it and kept saying, "Hurry up." When Mr. St. Amand said, "Here's your money back," and the man said, "Ain't it enough? Will you take $10? He took the $5 bill and some silver from his pocket. Description: age 31 or 32, height 5 feet 8 or 8.5, weight 175 or 180, dark complexion, full face, smooth shaven, a little round shouldered, and leaned a little to the left when walking. A plain dark suit, cutaway coat, a black stiff hat, white shirt and collar, and black bow. I saw the man go to Pleasant Street. He stood at the corner of Pleasant and Jinks Street a minute, then started towards New Bedford. Joseph Michaud, age 16, lives on Jinks Street. I saw the man and the team in the wood yard. When Mr. St. Amand said he could not take him to New Bedford, he said, "Take me to Steep Brook then." Description: age 40, dark complexion, height 5 feet 8 inches, dark clothes, white shirt and collar, black bow. Alexander Coate lives on Jinks Street, works at Arcans. A man came to the stable August 4th at 3:30 o'clock and asked me if he could be carried to New Bedford. I said, "No, sir." Description: age 29 or 30, height 5 feet 8 or 9 inches, weight 180 or 190, dark complexion, full face, dark cutaway coat, no vest, no tie, an outing shirt. When he went from the barn, he went towards Alden Street. You could probably track this man, like where he went, and if you go back over this and pull out the appropriate page of the Sanborn map. If I forget to put the link in the description, go to episode 1, and the link for the Fall River 1893 Sanborn map is in the description there. But I'll try and remember to put in this one. All right, everyone, that looks like a good stopping point for today. I will see you next time. And until then, happy hunting.